Before users can start using Copilot, admins need to provision capacity and allocate capacity. In this exercise, we'll go over the first run experience of Copilot for Security. To provision capacity, you must have an Azure subscription. You need to be an Azure owner or Azure contributor at the resource group level as a minimum. We're going to walk through the process of ensuring you have the appropriate role permissions first. This starts by enabling access management for Azure resources. Why is this needed? As a global administrator in Enter ID, you might not have access to all subscriptions and management groups in your directory. Enter ID and Azure resources are secured independently from one another. That is, Enter role assignments don't grant access to Azure resources, and Azure role assignments don't grant access to Enter ID. When you elevate your access, you're assigned the User Access Administrator role in Azure at the root scope. This allows you to view all resources and assign access in any subscription or management group in the directory. Once you're assigned the User Access Administrator role, you can assign a user the necessary access to provision SCUs for Copilot. For the purposes of this exercise, we'll show you the steps involved. You'll only be assigning yourself the necessary access. So we'll open up the portal, as you see here. And what we want to do is we want to enable access management for Azure resources. From here, the first thing we want to do is go to Enter ID. All right. From Enter ID, on the left-hand side, we're going to go to Manage. Okay. All right. And from Manage, we're going to scroll all the way down to Properties. Okay. Once we go into Properties, you'll see there's a toggle switch that says Access Management for Azure Resources. We need to make sure this toggle switch is on. Once we do that, don't forget to save. And by doing that, we've now allowed access management for resources to be defined. Now we can view all resources and assign access in any subscription or management group in the directory. We can assign ourselves the owner role for the Azure subscription to help that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back up here to Azure, and we're going to go into our subscriptions. So from subscriptions, we're going to choose our current subscription. What we're going to use is we're going to use this Woodgrove Bank subscription that we have built for this demo. From there, we're going to access the Access Control blade, which says Access Control IAM. And from there, we'll select Add. From Add, what we want to do is add a role assignment, because what we're doing is we're trying to make sure that we have the appropriate permissions to be able to enable Copilot for Security. From the Role tab, we want to find the Privileged Administrator roles. So you'll notice that they are called out separately on their own tab. These are the roles that grant administrative access. I'll choose that. I'll select Owner, and then Next. Okay. In the Select Members link, because you could do this with a Managed Identity, Users, Groups, or Service Principal, I'm going to choose Select Members. Okay. And to make things easy, I'm going to use the first person in the list, which is Avery Howard. So I'll select Avery, and then click the little plus sign, and you'll see Avery now shows up down here under Selected Members. We click the Select button, okay, and Next. Okay. We're going to allow this user to assign all roles except Privileged Administrator ones. So I'll choose that option. Okay. And we'll hit Next. We'll go to Review and Assign. And that role assignment you can see now shows up here to let me know that that role assignment was appropriately added. All of this is to give me the capability to be able to provision capacity within Copilot. Now, what we're going to do is now provision capacity for Copilot. There are really two options for provisioning this. We could do this within Copilot for Security, which is the recommended way. We could also do this through the portal. It's usually easier, usually more effective, and kind of get more a view of what you're actually of provisioning if you do it through provisioning for Copilot. So we're going to demo it that way. But you also could do this here in the portal. You can go look up Copilot for security, and then you could provision your initial environment that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to hop over here to securitycopilot.microsoft.com. When you start, the Getting Started wizard is going to be the first thing that you see. So because we don't have an existing environment, we can click Get Started. And what it'll tell me it's going to do, it's going to set up my tenant. It'll take a minute or so for this to set up. But what it's doing is it's ensuring that we have the appropriate capacity for the environment. You'll see what it does now is it asks me for the Azure subscription that I'm going to use. In this case, it's my Woodgrove Bank subscription. It asks me for a resource group where I'm going to deploy this capacity. I have this RG1 resource group, but of course you could use one that's necessary or works best for you. And then one of the most important things you'll need to configure is like your evaluation location. Where are you going to define or process information? Now, if you click the drop down here, you'll notice you have Australia, Europe, the UK, and the United States. Obviously, you want to pick a region that's close to you, but you also want to ensure if there's any data sovereignty requirements that you have for information or the processing of information that you adhere to those. We want to give this capacity a name. We'll call it Copilot cap. Okay. And once I've defined my capacity location, it'll then tell me a region where I'm actually going to deploy this capacity. There is a little note that says, if this location has too much traffic, do you want to allow Copilot to evaluate prompts anywhere in the world? This can optimize your performance. It's not a requirement, but you might notice some performance degradation if you don't select this. But remember, always keep in mind any compliance rules that you might have. We then need to select the number of compute units that we want to use. Compute units you could think of as the processing power that we use for allocating the evaluation of prompts. The more processing units you have, the more processing capacity you're reserving in Azure. But of course, the cost is going to be proportional to that. You'll see that as you increase the number of compute units you allocate, your total cost per month will change. If I set it up to 3, you can see that. If I drop it back down to 1, you have that here. Now, you will be able to adjust capacity that's actually in use within Copilot for Security after the fact. So if you allocate 3 SCUs and you decide that, well, I really only need 1, you can always adjust that capacity. We'll talk more about that in other videos. You'll then specify that you want to acknowledge that you understand these rules and click Continue. And it'll go ahead and set up your capacity. And what will happen, it tells you your data is going to be stored in the United States. We'll click Continue down here in the bottom right. It asks me, do you want to help improve Copilot? As part of your initial setup, it asks, do you want to allow Copilot to capture data to validate product performance using human review? And do you want to allow Microsoft to capture and review data to build and validate Microsoft's AI security model? Now, remember, when we talk about capturing data for the security model, if you click the little information tip here, it tells you Microsoft will not use customer data to train the foundational models and will not share customer data with OpenAI or other non-Microsoft partners. We're not selling or using this information outside of the context of Copilot for Security. We're just trying to help improve the response that Copilot Security gives to data. And you can opt in or out of those as necessary. You click Continue. You'll notice as part of your initial setup, Copilot provides contributor access to everyone by default and includes global administrators and security administrators as Copilot owners. In your production environment, you can change who has access to Copilot once you've configured the initial setup. We'll click Continue. And we're all set. You're now ready to start using Copilot. That's it. So once you click Finish, your Copilot environment is now available. You have both the standalone and the embedded Copilot experience now accessible within your environment. So in this exercise, we reviewed how you provision Copilot for Security. Thank you for watching.